Hi, welcome back to My Favorite Mistake. I'm Mark Graban. Our guest today is John St.Pierre. He's an entrepreneurial strategist, a business growth advisor, and among other things, he's co-host of a podcast called the Entrepreneurs United podcast. He co-hosts that with Rich Hoffman. They recently had me as a guest on their show, so I'll put a link to that in the show notes. But John has over 25 years of experience in co-founding and growing successful businesses in various industries, growing two of those companies to more than 50 million in revenue. So before I tell you a little bit more about John, hi, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. Excited to speak with you today.
Yeah, well, it's good to see you again and continue in a way a conversation that we had before. So thank you again for being here. But John is, I'll tell you a little more about him. Currently the majority owner and chairperson of Rhombus Group, a private holding company formed in 2003 with several small businesses. He's also author of a book titled The $100 Million Journey, Your Guide to Growing the Business of Your Dreams Without Going Off the Cliff. So we'll talk about that later. It's a book that shares a lot of strategies and insights about scaling your business. So it's going to be a great opportunity to cover all of that. But John, as we always do here, the pressing question, I'm really curious to hear your answer on this. What's your favorite mistake?
Yeah, Mark, my favorite mistake for me is my biggest. And it certainly was not my favorite at the time. I don't know anybody who at the time of making a mistake would go, "Oh, this is great."
Right.
However, I think in the story of my journey, and when the story's told in the end, the mistake that drove me to find my purpose in life, to align my life's goal and mission, my life plan with what I wanted to achieve as an entrepreneur, was the story of one of those companies you said that I grew to north of 50 million. It was successful on the way there. However, there was an end to it that wasn't so successful. It was one of my biggest mistakes, one of my biggest failures. And it was really, trying to overgrow a business more than it could afford to grow based on my aggressive desire to build this business to $100 million, and let's go and let's buy this new company and let's hire some more people and let's start this new division over here. And as we were doing all of that, and it was fun, we had an amazing culture and amazing people, I made some pretty big mistakes. And one of those was, taking on too much bank debt to grow the company. One of them was trying to grow too fast. One of them was I made a couple of terrible hires that really cost me, raised a little bit too much capital, and my equity was getting diluted along the way. And so as much as the company was growing and the company appeared to be successful, my equity was being diluted along the way. I was losing control of the boat, so to speak. And ultimately, 6 months after raising our last round of capital, around $20 million, I was fired from the very company I spent 15 years growing. My heart, my soul, my everything. And again, not favorite at the time. Yeah. But that was 5 years ago today, 5 years and a few months ago today. And the journey since then has been an awakening, a rebirth of really what I'm trying to do in life, and really a realignment to really what I was trying to do in my life that ultimately is my favorite mistake.
Wow. I appreciate you sharing that. And like you said, a favorite mistake is not always the biggest. I'm not asking guests, what's your biggest mistake? As they say, time heals all wounds. That's sort of true, or given enough time, 5 years here, true enough to talk about it?
Yeah. Time certainly heals for sure. However, it's really the finding yourself again. And not that I felt completely lost before this event, but had this event not happened, had this mistake not happened, I was heading in the wrong direction. And I could be sitting here today talking about this business that I had grown, but I had lost myself. I really wasn't accomplishing what I wanted to accomplish in life. I could be miserable. I could be in a whole bunch of different areas that I'm not in today. Now, this mistake hurt people. It hurt me. It hurt my family. It hurt friends I care so deeply about. It hurt a lot. However, had it not happened, I don't think this whole new world would have opened up to me, the reflection, the perspective, to take these learnings and move them further in my life to further develop myself as a human, as an entrepreneur. And so for me, that's what makes it more of a favorite. But the wound is still there. You make a
Sure.
mistake, and sometimes mistakes are irreversible, and you
Hmm.
can't go back and change it. You can't go back and redo. There's no undo button, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so your perspective, your introspection on what you're going to gain from that mistake to further, move your life in the right direction is very important.
Did you, I mean, did you take time off to kind of say, look, I'm going to reflect, recover, reset,
Yeah.
however you might have been thinking of it at the time?
Yeah, I did. I really didn't have a choice. I mean, I woke up the next morning and I didn't have access to my email account. So my calendar's empty. My email box is empty.
Mm.
It was kind of like a hard stop, right? It went, and by the way, Mark, that was 20 years, right? From college, it was
Yeah.
20 years of a hard run. I was
Yeah.
running hard all the time, on the go, never taking time for myself. I'd always take time for my companies. Hey, executive
Sure.
team, we need to go on a retreat for 2 to 3 days to sit in a room and really strategically think through this business. But I had never once done that for myself. I had never once took myself out and said, what is the strategic plan for you? What's your life plan? What are you trying to accomplish? I was always doing things for my family, doing things for the business, really not focused on the me. And so, yeah, it was a forced sabbatical in a way.
Yeah.
But I did intentionally take longer. I took about a year. Not that
Hmm.
I wasn't involved in doing other things during that year and working on other business ventures, but I committed to myself for the next year. I'm not going to really commit myself to a new full-time role anywhere.
Hmm.
I'm going to take walks every day. I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to eat healthier. I'm going to focus,
Hmm.
and I really took the time for self-reflection to
Yeah.
figure out where am I going in life, and what is my life plan? What's important to me?
Yeah. Because as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, I imagine, like, yeah, there's these questions of what to do next. Do
Yeah,
you start another company if that's in your blood? Would somebody hire you as, CEO of a company that someone else had founded, and is that role reversed? And now you're not causing another founder to be fired, but maybe replacing one who had been fired. I'm curious how you thought through the universe of options. You're not going to go on, job websites and post a resume. It's a different
yeah.
consideration of, okay, what to do next. And did you have anyone helping you think through that?
Yeah. Well, I certainly had some friends and my wife, different mentors that I've had in my life that I certainly was consoling with during that time.
Mhm.
But as I was doing my research, back to your question, Mark, I put my life in front of my career at that moment.
Mhm.
It was a question of what do I want to achieve in life? And then I'm going to align what I'm going to do in business to that plan, as opposed
Mhm.
to I'm just going to be this gung ho executive entrepreneur is going to go build things, but it's not connected to my life plan. So once I
Mm.
developed my life plan, the strategy I use, and I recommend this to all entrepreneurs, is I use the Venn diagram from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, the hedgehog concept,
Mhm.
which was I had heard like if you can find the sweet spot between these three circles of this Venn diagram, that's where success lives. And the
Yeah.
three circles are what are you most passionate about? What can you be the best in the world at, and what can drive you economically, what can really drive your economic engine. And so I literally sat with that and I started journaling for the first time ever during the sabbatical. I had never journaled before. Why do I
Yeah.
need to journal? Why do I need to in my mind I was just growing things, right? So I started
Mhm.
journaling and I started thinking about, okay, what am I most passionate about? What
Mhm.
can I be the best in the world at? What
Mhm.
can drive my economic engine? And from that drove the next step to your question, which
Mhm.
was, okay, well, if this is what I'm most passionate about, what can be the best in the world at, and can drive my economic engine, well, then maybe going to get another operational job is not what I'm looking for.
Mhm. Right.
What I think I'm most passionate about is I love working with entrepreneurs. I love helping entrepreneurs build their business. I love being an entrepreneur myself, but I want to own a business. I don't want to operate a business. So how can I
Mhm.
use all these lessons and learnings from this mistake and this company that I had grown to north of 50 million and lost it, and apply all those learnings of I'm never going to do that again,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do this to other businesses and help them grow. And so I subsequently did that. I started
Mhm.
working with other companies that I had investments in, and we grew one of those companies from a little under million in the mid to 2016-ish time period to north of 100 million in 2022. And it was then that I realized, you know what, I got to tell the story of these learnings that I've applied to this business. But yeah, it was clear to me that I didn't want to be an operator.
Yeah. And then saying, I need to share these stories. That's the genesis for the book.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so come back and we'll definitely explore the book a lot here and lessons learned. But a couple other follow-up questions I wanted to ask about your story. You talk about that Venn diagram. Do you feel like previous opportunities maybe only had two of those three instead of having all three aligning around purpose, what you can be the best of the world at, what has economic value?
Yeah.
Or is it more than that?
Well, what's funny about that is somebody had asked me recently, John, if you could be the CEO of any company in the world, what company would you like to be the CEO of?
Mm-hmm.
And my answer, Mark, was I'd like to be CEO of the company I lost. Because that company fulfilled all three boxes. And I didn't know that at the time necessarily, but I think I did because I was very passionate. I was in the sports industry. I'm very passionate about sports. We had grown into one of the largest youth sports global companies in the world. It was driving our economic engine. It was doing really well for me. And so that kind of fit all the boxes. And so when I lost that, it was like, okay, now what? And to your point, when I had a couple of conversations about becoming the CEO of another company or starting a new business, I started looking around those circles going, well, they don't fit the three boxes like that other one did. They only fit two or they only fit one. And so I had to find the one that fit all three. And for me, that was really working with entrepreneurs and helping them build a business of their dreams.
Yeah. And when you think about culture, I wanted to dig a little bit more. And you say that company had an amazing culture. So in what ways? What were the key attributes that made it amazing, or that you would want to help cultivate or see in other businesses? And is what's amazing to you different than what might be amazing to a different entrepreneur?
Yeah, probably. I guess for starters, we were in a fun industry, right? So we're working in the sports industry. It was a global business. There was a lot of travel involved internationally for the sports business. We had a very entrepreneurial culture. All the divisions were run by vice presidents that had their own P&Ls, that ran their own little businesses within our business. So that was cool and entrepreneurial. We had a lot of fun. We had that kind of little bit of that .com feel with the ping pong table and it was really a fun environment. And the one testament to all of that, Mark, is I don't remember ever running an ad to hire somebody. And we had north of 500 employees. All of our employees that we were hiring, for the most part, maybe with the exception of an accounting role or some back office roles, were all warm network referrals of people who wanted to come work for our business because of the culture, because of the team. And subsequently, I had a lot of my best friends working in the business as well. So from that perspective, it was just a very enjoyable place to be. Our retention was very high. I always think it's evidenced by the people that want to come work for your company. You don't even have a job posting out there. You're not even looking for somebody, but people are knocking on the door. That's the kind of culture we had that I never had before, and haven't yet since been able to replicate.
So, John, I want to ask maybe just like two other questions related to the story, and then we have focused on the book and different lessons and principles and things you're sharing with others. Along the way, you talked about some of those different decisions that turned out to be mistakes in terms of growth, debt, hiring, losing control of the boat, as you put it. Did you have board members or other executives on your team that were, I don't know, like pushing back on some of those decisions of like, hey, John, you might be making a mistake, or was everyone sort of all in on that boat?
I definitely had some, a couple of the people that I've had in my life at the time, like, are you sure? My wife being one of them. Are you sure you want to raise this much money? Like, are you sure you need to do this? Aren't you going a little too fast here? But I couldn't see it. I was so, I'm a set target, hit target person, Mark. And for me, it was I had made a commitment. We're going to grow this company from 10 million to 100 million in 5 years. I had this vision, I had the plan, and it's almost like anybody that would get in the way, I'd give them all the excuses as to why. No, we have to do this. This is why it's important. It was so goal oriented, but it had a disconnect to what we were ultimately trying to grow and achieve. And one of the words I used from that I lacked ultimately was I lacked patient ambition. I was ambitious, but I had no patience. I wasn't willing to wait that extra time, build the company a little slower with a little more stability. It was all go all the time, and we got too far over our skis. And so, those people that were there providing that advisement, unfortunately, fell a little bit on deaf ears. And those are the people that, certainly in hindsight was like, yeah, you were right. Sorry, but too little too late for that.
Yeah. I'm curious what advice you might have for other founders. I think of them, this is going back 20 years ago, almost exactly. There was a startup software company in Austin that I started working for in late 2000. And after a couple rounds of venture funding, the co-founder CEO got pushed out and replaced by somebody that was pretty tight with the VC firm that had brought in most, if not, they were a significant investor anyway. This is a very broad question, I guess. It might not be just a piece of advice, but as you coach people now, or as you may share in the book on this, what advice do you have for founders about weighing the question of when to take money, how much to take, who to ideally choose?
Yeah.
Who is investing in you?
Yeah, well, that story is very familiar.
And I wasn't, I don't know even now. Okay, well, why he got replaced, other than he wasn't their guy, or they didn't think he was the one to bring it to the next stage, right?
Yeah, 100%, and that's certainly what happened to me. But the person doing that sale, that this person's not, the right person to take it, is potentially the person who wants that role. On the backside, at least in my case, it was. But I'll tell you, in the book, I go through 7 principles, and the question you're asking is principle 1, and potentially principle 2. Principle 1 is protect your equity, protect and grow your equity. A lot of entrepreneurs, Mark, start their companies, and the first thing they do is, hey, Mark, I got this idea. You want to do this business together? Me and you, 50-50, right? Or even worse, 4 of us.
Hey, gave away half their equity.
Yeah, there's 4 of us here. Let's do this together. 25, 25, 25, 25. How does that ever work? No one ever provides the same equitable amount of contributions to the business, and it ends up becoming a disaster down the road. But immediately off the bat, they're diluted. And Mark, I had never started a company ever without partners. I don't know if I lacked the confidence, maybe I lacked the capital, maybe I lacked something, but I always wanted to bring people along with me. And right off the bat, I was diluted, right? But then it gets worse over time because we glamorize as entrepreneurs, I raised $1 million. I raised $5 million. I raised 20 million. Everybody thinks that's the way to grow a company. But as you do that, your equity goes this way. And so what happened in our case, our company was going this way. My equity was going that way. It was completely disconnected. Right. And so I ask entrepreneurs all the time, I was like, would you rather own 10% of a $100 million company or 100% of a $10 million company? Because there's a big difference. But ultimately, it's the same amount of value for you. Right. But it's 10 times the work, if not 20 times.
Yeah. And maybe it's not as simple as this. But if you don't have 51% of the company, there's all sorts of bad things that could happen, right?
Yeah. Well, I would argue even if you don't have 51%, because when investors invest in your company, let's say you own 100% of your company, and an investor comes in and says, hey, Mark, here's $2 million. I'm only looking for 25% of your company. The entrepreneur, like I did, thinks, that's fine. I still own 75% of the company. But guess what? In that agreement, they're going to want to draft with all their legal assistants, is going to have all these veto rights, control rights, all these different things to protect their investment, which I understand. But ultimately, you're still giving up control of the business. So I think one of the biggest myths for entrepreneurs is if you own a majority of the stock, you own a majority of the control. And that is not always the case.
So that's why as I was asking it, that's why I was thinking like this feels like that's probably not true because I haven't lived through any of that. I think, that's a really key points. So people will learn that and a whole lot more in the book. Again, we're joined John St.Pierre. The book is The $100 Million Journey, Your Guide to Growing the Business of Your Dreams Without Going Off the Cliff. I think final question I wanted to ask about the firing, and maybe this is a short answer, and like how is that news delivered?
Yeah. It was delivered at the end of a board meeting after a company summit. So we had a company summit, and then at the end of the summit, we had a board meeting. And at the end of the board meeting, they asked me to stay behind the room. And one of the partners that we had in the business, who was a majority partner of the business, delivered the news to me that was passed down to him from the private equity firm that owned a minority of the business. To basically, they wanted to replace me with somebody else. And this was 6 months after that equity firm joined the company, right? So it was obvious they didn't have faith that I was the right CEO to take them to the next level. And potentially, Mark, based on the mistakes that I made that I discussed earlier, maybe they were right? I'm not going to judge that at this particular moment, but yeah, that's how it was delivered, and the learnings were massive.
And it came as quite a surprise.
It came as a shock.
Yeah.
But for a couple of months leading up to that, I felt something was wrong. I felt the target on the back, everything being questioned, right? And I was reaching out to my mentors going, something's not right here. Something's not correct. So you could feel the change in the temperature. But certainly after 15 years of growing a company, what I would have expected is, hey, John, we want to bring in somebody with more experience growing a company to 100 million. We're going to bring that person in. We want you to move into this role, maybe the president role, and kind of work with there was blood, sweat, and tears into this business. I was a board member. I was an equity holder. I co-founded the business. This was my vision to grow it. So the shock to the system wasn't we want to bring in some additional executive support to help grow this. It was, here's the door, get out of here.
Right, because there would have been different ways to help coach you up or provide some resources or partner with you. And
correct.
Yeah. But I'm glad you found the positive, or, as you were sharing earlier, the opportunity to connect to life plan and purpose and goals. And so let's talk more about that.
Yeah.
And the book, and I'll put a link in the show notes to the website for the book. I watched the intro video there, John, and there was a bleep in there, and I don't think we need to do that here. And what I think you said was, I'm paraphrasing, that you said in the video you made so many mistakes, you had all these learnings, and what I think you said was, correct me if I'm wrong, I'd be a dick for not sharing it.
Yes.
That's correct. Bleep, but it came across. And, I thought, well, there's a colorful way of putting it, and thinking of the serious question there is that comes across as, I think, a very impassioned desire, if not obligation, to help others.
Yeah.
So if you could tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, when you're going through a massive failure like that, there's two ways to take it. Poor me, I'm the victim. And I certainly had those days. But then you kind of move to perspective. Okay, this sucks, but you know what? I got a beautiful family. I got my health, things, okay, what's the worst case scenario? What do I need to do? Right. Then it moves to introspection. And, okay, how did I put myself in this position? What are the key things that I did that put myself in the position for this to happen to me and to others and to the business and everything else? And that's where the principles started coming out. And I had an investment in another business, and I said, you know what? And it was actually the partner in that business who challenged me. He said, look, I know you wanted to grow that business to 100 million, and it didn't work out. And I feel bad for that. I've been along this whole journey. I've seen everything that's happened. But why don't you take all those learnings and apply it to this business? Let's grow this business to 100 million, but let's do it the right way. And that kind of was like, okay, this is interesting. And so I crystallized all my learnings into 7 principles. I call them 7 principles of entrepreneurial success. And we applied those 7 principles to that business. And at that particular time, Mark, writing a book I just failed the big business. I'm not going to go write a book about simply the failure. I got to figure out what this means. But we took those 7 principles and successfully grew that business to north of 100 million the right way. And
Mm.
when I saw that about to happen, I was like, I have to tell this story because these 7 principles are so critical to entrepreneurial success. And if you violate one of them, you can find
Mhm.
yourself really in some big trouble. And that's where the book was created.
Yeah. So there's there's a redemption in that, even more so of taking those lessons learned and then applying it, and then that makes for a very different book than a book just focused on, for how to not get fired as a founder.
Yeah.
Is there something special about the 100 million number in terms of what that means for next steps for a company or sustainability, or or it's just a good round number goal?
Yeah, so there's a lot of people who say, this is great, but I don't necessarily want to grow a $100 million company. I want a $10 million company or a $5 million company. And my message to them is, look, the principles still apply, but you have to be bold when you put something on a book cover, and let's go. But what's interesting is when you talk to really bold entrepreneurs that have big visions, somehow, some way, 100 million comes into play. And it did for me. Like, for me, that was something that I just had as, if I could grow a company to be worth $100 million one day, or grow to $100 million in revenue, like that would be a high level that's different than 10 million or a million or, different. So for me, it was kind of a stretch goal that I always set out there. And inevitably now I'm connected to a lot of entrepreneurs that have, $20, $30 million businesses that want to grow to 100. I have some entrepreneurs that have a $1 to $2 million business that I work with that envision someday in the next 10, 20 years, they want this business to be worth, $100 million. They want to create $100 million worth of net worth. And it's a big, hairy, audacious goal. And the reason why that's relevant in my story, Mark, is if you want to build a lifestyle business where you fulfill your financial needs for you and your family, you have a small business. There's thousands, if not millions, of people that have lifestyle businesses that are doing very, very well, create a nice amount of wealth for them and their families, and it's a great place to be. It's the American dream. But there are also another set of entrepreneurs that want more than the lifestyle business. And if you try and grow from a lifestyle business size to a high performance business size, that's where all the cliffs are. That's where all the danger can be. That's where the vultures come out and try and really clamp onto your business, or that's where the litigation risks become bigger. Or, everything becomes just massively bigger. And if you're not careful on that journey from a lifestyle business to high performance, you can really get hurt.
Right. Yeah, it's the cliff or cliffs, as you said, for the founder or founders or the company going off a cliff. And, so I was going to ask, and I think, in the subtitle of the book, it says going off the cliff, but it's not just the cliff of, let's say, growing too quickly, taking on too much debt. When I was in business school, I remember one of the core lessons they would talk about is, the biggest reason seemingly successful companies fail is that, they grow and expand too quickly and in a way that's not sustainable. So that's certainly, it's common enough story that even 25 years ago they were warning us against that. But what are some of the most common cliffs that a company or a founder might be getting near?
Yeah, well, I'll go through them if you don't mind real quick, and you tell me where you'd like to dive in. We talked about principle 1, which is protect and grow your equity. That's a cliff. You could be really dangerous there, right? If you give up your equity. Principle 2 is you have to build your own capital. If you don't build your own capital through net operating cash flow, you can grow yourself poor. You can grow too quick and not have enough cash flow to sustain the growth and put yourself in big trouble. And if you don't grow your own capital, guess what? You go to banks, you go to investors, it violates principle 1. You end up giving up control of your equity in the business. So principle 2 is build your own capital. Principle 3 is reinvest smartly. A massive cliff. When we were growing our business to north of $50 million, the one that we lost, as we were growing it, we were taking profitable divisions and taking the profits from those divisions and going wide into other divisions that took massive amounts of investment, as opposed to doubling down on your winners, your high gross margin opportunities to further develop more capital, principle 2, to further protect your equity, principle 1. So they all tie together. Principle 4 is you got to build a team and a culture of intrapreneurship.
Mhm.
right? You need to build a team that cares about your business as much as you do. A team that's motivated and driven on the mission and vision and BHAG of the business. They're financially motivated to help grow the value of the company. You have to build a culture of entrepreneurship. Principle 5 is protect the house. The amount of entrepreneurs I talk to today that still don't do vulnerability assessments on their business. Being an entrepreneur is a game of whack-a-mole. You hit 1, 2, 3 down, and 4, 5, 6 pop up. Or if there's 100 holes in the boat, you plug 99, and the one hole you don't plug, water's coming through. Right?
Yeah.
They're going to find the vulnerabilities. You have to plug them. You have to be really wise as you're growing a business, because today, frivolous litigation to employee litigation. I mean, there's so many things that can happen to your business if you're not tight and secure. Principle 6 is how to access owners' liquidity, another cliff. As you're growing, you could grow your business for 20 years and never get a dime for it and lose it someday. How are you accessing your owner's liquidity along the way to move some of your wealth from your business's balance sheet to your personal balance sheet in tax efficient manners? Very important. And then principle 7 is how do you move from CEO to chairperson? There's a lot of entrepreneurs I talk to today. They've had businesses for 10, 15, 20 years, and they're exhausted. They're fatigued.
Yeah.
They can't grow their businesses anymore. They're actually tired of it. They start hating their business because they are the operator of their business. They're not a business owner. They're a business operator. Yeah. And so if you want to be a real business owner and grow a high performance business, you have to replace yourself with these entrepreneurs, move yourself to a more strategic level in the business, and become the chairperson of it. So those are the 7 principles, which I equate to what the cliffs would be in my mind.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, if you violate one of them, there's real danger. If you're violating a couple of those principles, it's either more cliffs to potentially go off of, or the cliff comes at you faster. You don't see it. Something sneaks up on you, right? When we talk about protecting the house, vulnerability assessments, I mean, it seems like that would be really important to make sure you're seeing the cliff, that you're not a wily coyote who sees the cliff after he's already run off the end, chasing the roadrunner, and he got nowhere to go. But, well, he levitated in midair for a minute until he looks down and poof. But, real world doesn't work that way, whether it's a coyote or a business. You have other thoughts or tips on making sure that you don't have blinders on, that, there's a cliff coming off to the side where, okay, well, if the wind blows, now I'm going to go off that cliff, even though it looks safe. I'm torturing that analogy, maybe.
Yeah, no, but your question is spot on. In the midst of growing that business that I failed on, one of my biggest mistakes, Rich Hoffman, who you now know, I was having a conversation with him. This is the midst of growth. I mean, we're maybe 40 million of 50 million. Hey, we're going, right? We're cooking. And he has a call with me and he says, John, who's coaching you these days? You guys are growing pretty big. I was like, Rich, I don't need a coach. I got this. I got my plan. I know what's going on, right? And I was making these massive one-door decisions, irreversible one-door decisions with no guidance. I tell you today, Mark, I barely order lunch. No, I'm kidding. I order lunch, but I don't make any one-door decisions without my board of protectors around me. I have now like a world-class small, medium-sized business CPA, not the mom and pop bookkeeper who does my taxes, right? I have a private wealth advisor, handling that side. I got a commercial insurance broker, a corporate attorney, a litigation attorney, an estate trust attorney for irrevocable trusts and trusts. I got this board of protect coach, mentor. I got these board of protectors, and whenever we're faced with a big decision in our business, we do not make the decision unless we get unanimous consent from the entire board of advisors and protectors. We just don't. And when I talk to entrepreneurs today, I think it's their biggest weak point. Do they have a world-class team of advisors? And I remember reading this book when I was, very fresh, 20 years ago. I'm reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he would say, you know what? Every advisor, you can get world-class advisors around the table. It's worth every dime. Meanwhile, most entrepreneurs are like, oh, you'll do my taxes for $2,000. You're going to charge me $3,000. Okay, I'm going to do the $2,000, right? And we're penny wise, dollar foolish, and we don't see the return on investment on getting the best world-class advisors on our team and what that return on investment can be. And that's been a big change for me.
Well, I love that you've learned from mistakes and you have the passion to help others avoid cliffs, avoid mistakes that lead to that sort of catastrophic failures. One other question I want to ask about that, for a couple of wrap-up questions, and in that path to 100 million, are there certain points in growth that are generally riskiest? Like, I don't know, it's 10 million a particular danger zone, 50 million, or does it very much depend on the company?
Yeah. Well, if you take the dollars out of it and you ask the same question in terms of on the entrepreneurial journey, are there different phases where it's more dangerous than others, right?
Yeah.
I think there are certain inflection points when you start a company, who you partner with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the amount of partnerships that end the way they started in business are like 1%. Like I barely know any, right? So how you set up the company right off the bat, right? How you set up your operating agreements, your buy-sell agreements, your shareholder agreements, right? When people are contributing to the business, people rush into business. You don't rush into marriage because you're making a vow to be married here.
Right.
But people rush into business partnerships like it's going out of style, right? You got to be really careful on the onset. Then I would say the next phase is if ever you're at an inflection point in your business where you need to go raise capital or you need to hire, somebody in your business is going to be, high level executive person to run your business. Those parts are very, very dangerous. You got to make the right decisions on who you want to partner with, who you want to bring into your business. Do you really need that capital? Can you get the capital some other way? That's a very dangerous point. And those happen multiple times throughout your business life cycle. So every single one of them is a dangerous point. And then I would say when you start considering exiting the business, I know a lot of entrepreneurs that exited their business because they thought it was the only way to monetize what they built. And now they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Or they
regret not being in the business anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all that, John. And speaking of businesses, Rhombus Group, is there a common theme for the businesses within Rhombus Group?
Yeah, so Rhombus Group is a holding company, a private holding company of ours, and we have 5 small to medium-sized businesses within those within the different LLCs, if you will, and it's really entrepreneurs, CEOs that are running those businesses. I'm the chairperson of those businesses and coach and guide them, so it fulfills my bucket of passion and need there with them. It's a very entrepreneurial organization. And all those companies aspire to very nice growth curves in their businesses. But I think the common thread is within all of those businesses, we're looking to grow intrapreneurs within them as well. Most of them are run by former intrapreneurs that are now entrepreneurs and partners and CEOs of those businesses. So I think for me, I've moved a little bit of my operator mindset to more of a mentor mindset, leader mentor. So if we can lead and mentor people within our organizations to be more entrepreneurial and to grow within our organizations with a more of an entrepreneurial mindset, not only do they grow as a person, their personal balance sheets can grow, the companies can grow, everybody can be fulfilled in their life's objectives. So to me, that's really a common thread throughout Rhombus Group.
Yeah. Well, I'll link to the Rhombus Group website in the show notes too. And again, the podcast, you mentioned Rich Hoffman again as your co-host. Entrepreneurs United. Tell us a little bit about the podcast. And even though I met the both of you together, I don't know the answer to the question of how did you two come together to unite to do Entrepreneurs United?
Yeah. So Rich and I have known each other for over 25 years. Our first job out of university, we were general managers with College Pro Painters, which is a franchise company that used to exist here in the United States for painting, a sister company of Pro Painters, some may have heard of. And so first job out of university, we're working together. We were general managers, we became housemates, best friends, and we were sponges for leadership back then. We would read every book, go to every leadership conference. Life took us our different ways. And 5 years ago, we reconnected and said, you know what, around the time of this failure, I'm like, hey, you know what, I want to put something together to help entrepreneurs. Would you do this podcast with me? And we're 5 seasons in. We come out every week, the Entrepreneurs United podcast. We run an event for entrepreneurs. Last year was in Austin, as a matter of fact. This year's in Charleston, South Carolina in September. Our passion is to really help entrepreneurs that have aspirations to build the business of their dreams, and provide them with a sharpening of the saw experience from all these different experts that we can bring on the podcast and into our events. So that's a genesis.
All right. Well, cool. Well, I hope people will check it out. I'm sure you can find it wherever you're listening to this podcast. Put a link to that in the show notes. Again, it's Entrepreneurs United podcast, and the book written by our guest here today, John St.Pierre. The book is The $100 Million Journey, Your Guide to Growing the Business of Your Dreams Without Going Off the Cliff. John, thank you for telling us your cliff story. I really do appreciate that, your willingness to share. And again, I appreciate your journey to find something positive out of that and reconnect to things and to share that passion and those principles with others. So thank you for all of that. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thanks for what you do.
All right, thanks.